best debater in the world, doing the thing passionately.
Not necessarily the best debating.
You have to forgive some of them because some of them are already losing some confidence. The point I'm making is this: you guys watch this debate not just to enjoy it. That's the crucial thing. You guys are going to be competitive. You'll be one of your competitors when he goes to Asian. You'll be up against good debaters. Take good notes. Learn from the best they can offer, whether it's the manner, eye contact, gesticulation, good matter, good way of putting down people with POI, good way of setting POI and answering them. Learn, expect from them. Don't just enjoy this debate. Although it's called a supervision debate, you're not here to be entertained. You're here to see how the veterans do it, and if you can, emulate them. If you're good at imitation, do so. Not Omar's hairstyle and stuff like that. Take note how they actively stand up and give POI. See how they answer POI. And most of all, see how they deal with the opposition's argument in terms of delivery, in terms of rebuttal and assumption. Okay? Elmar is the chief timer and the speaker of the house. I have unfortunately been given the task to adjudicate, so I'm going to sit behind and let her take over the moment.
Great, hi guys. Welcome to the exhibition debate. It's a round between Asia and America and England. Right here. We know everyone's support is, right? So I'd like to announce the speakers. On the side of the government, we have Tuna. Jason. And Omar. After introducing the sexy side of the house, let's announce the debaters from the opposition. We have Len. Logan. And TJ. So without further ado, since we have the time Nazi here, on the motion that this House believes the United States should immediately withdraw its troops from Iraq, we would like to invite the Prime Minister to start the debate.
My government is proud to support this motion. The greatest mistake of the 21st century has been the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq. Ignoring the lessons of Vietnam, lessons that we will recall in this debate, U.S. military imperialism has spread death, destruction, and suffering. The longer the occupation goes on, the worse things will become. Let me explain what we mean by immediate withdrawal. By immediately, we mean that as soon as the Iraqi constitution is completed, which reports now that it will be in 1 week, and ratified, there's already a majority in favor of it, the U.S. will notify its allies and proceed with a safe, quick withdrawal of all U.S. forces from Iraq. They will go home to their families. We will encourage Korean soldiers to go home to their families. We will encourage Polish soldiers to go home to their families.
What information, sir?
Not yet. We believe occupation is a mistake. Continuing to act a mistake leads to further catastrophe. As Vietnam showed, ending U.S. occupation sooner would have been better than later. We challenge the opposition to show that things will be better if U.S. troops stay longer. In my speech, I will argue that withdrawal will save lives. I will show that it will reduce terrorism. And I will show that it will improve the possibilities of Iraqi self-determination. In our second speech, we will argue that withdrawal will normalize international relations with a broad number of advantages. With that in mind, I would like to proceed to our first major argument. The withdrawal of U.S. troops immediately will save lives. Countless Iraqi citizens are killed by occupation forces each day. The U.S. government no longer counts Iraqi casualties, but every day in the news we see the innocent die, blown up by people with bombs strapped to them in marketplaces, killed on their way to buy food for their children. Countless Iraqi citizens are caught in the crossfire. I recall the story of a pregnant woman. I believe you will listen to this story first, gentlemen. A pregnant woman with her children on the way to the hospital in need of speed, not properly braking soon enough for the American checkpoint. The soldiers, nervous for their own safety, understandably, machine-gunned the car and killed everyone inside.
On that very point, sir.
Please feel free to defend that, sir.
Prove to me that when the American troops withdraw, the insurgents in Iraq will stop killing people and will just have peace and security throughout the land. Prove to me that that's going to happen when they leave.
I believe, sir, that U.S. forces are the lightning rod. U.S. forces are the outsider. I'm sorry, sir. I'm answering your point, and you should listen. That U.S. forces are the lightning rod. They are the invaders. They are the outsiders. They are the non-Muslims. And we believe that the Iraqi people will be able to make their own peace. Then no thank you, sir. Occupying troops are a lightning rod, opposition. Listen to that. Answer it when you get a chance for violence. Hostages, Italian, American, South Korean, beheaded on video. Justify that, sir. That will not happen when we're gone. You need to sit down. You need to sit down. In a climate of violence, criminal elements and opposing groups are free to settle old scores. Once the invaders are gone, normality can return.
Why not? Prove that.
Sir, please don't interrupt me. I'm not recognizing you, sir. The Iraqi people cannot receive help that they need from outside. NGOs, the UN, and others will not go in while occupying troops remain. Countries who would help, such as France and others, will not go in as long as the occupying troops are there. And they cannot get the help they need. No, thank you. My second major argument. I believe that there will be a reduction in terrorism. Before the invasion, there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq. Osama bin Laden opposed Saddam Hussein. But now, even the U.S. Pentagon agrees that there are countless terrorists who are going to Iraq. Why? Because they find that there are infidel invaders that they can attack.
On that point, sir.
I'll take your point.
So tell me, sir, and prove this, that when the United States people leave, that these terrorists will not claim credit for that. That they will not say that it was because of their movement that the U.S. people leave. Prove to me that that's going to happen.
I will believe, because of our model, sir, that the Iraqi government will claim that the ratification of the Constitution made the U.S. troops leave. The government will take credit for that. I know you don't like my answer, sir. You'll have your chance to answer it later. Hundreds of thousands of new terrorists have been recruited globally because of the Iraqi invasion. There is terrorism in Iraq every day. But there's also terrorism in London, terrorism in Madrid, and in other locations. Why? Because of U.S. troops in Iraq. That is what they claim, that is what they say, and soon it could be coming to South Korea, because unfortunately they are a part of this occupying force as well. My third major argument is that we believe in the self-determination of the Iraqi people. The opposition is going to tell you that there will be violence. There will be violence when U.S. troops leave, but there will be less violence than there is now. They are the imperialists because they will say U.S. troops need to be there to save people's lives. When has that ever been true? They ask us for proof. We say in Vietnam that when the U.S. withdrew, that quickly the situation was normalized. The violence ceased, and Vietnam became an operating country, which is now a part of the world community. When the United States leaves, the conflict will stop. They are the lightning rod. When they say that the new government will not succeed, they are saying that someone else needs to be there to tell the Iraqi people how to run their country. We respect the Iraqi people. We believe they are intelligent, they are freedom-loving, and they are peace-loving, and we say, give them their own government. They believe that U.S. troops are the answer. We believe that the Iraqi people are the answer. And I think you will decide that this government is correct.
We would like to thank the Prime Minister for his comments. Now we would like to invite the Leader of Opposition to
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a great fan of war, not a great fan of American politics, but I do believe that when you make a promise, you keep that promise. I think America's made a commitment to rebuild Iraq, to bring safety to Iraq, and sustainable safety, not temporary safety, not as long as we have a document that says, maybe this is how things might work. They're not going to stay around long enough to figure out whether it works or not be responsible for the possible failures in the Constitution and the lots of possible failures in the Constitution and leave. We think that's very, very irresponsible, and that's a greater mistake than invading a country in the first place, and it's being completely irresponsible. What I'm going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to say, we can take a stance that immediate withdrawal from Iraq, whether it's just after the Constitution within the next week, we'll accept that. We say it does more harm than good to the people of Iraq and to America. I'm going to talk about the people of Iraq in regards to upholding that American commitment. I'm going to talk about security, I'm going to talk about political stability, and how American involvement on the ground is vital in ensuring both things. Can I come up my water tuna, if that so needs you. Sit down. But my second speaker will talk about then, Mr. Speaker, is from the American perspective and American interest. He'll talk about the short and long-term damage to the US reputation. He'll talk about how this will harm the psyche of Americans. Because whether or not they chose to support the war in the first place, they are currently involved in that war. Now what I'll do before that is address the issues in the case presented by the leader, or by the Prime Minister. Now he said, it's just like Vietnam, it is a mistake. You see, firstly, it is not like Vietnam. Vietnam was an ongoing war where they never really established a position. Here we're in the position of already building a country. We'd rather draw an analogy to Afghanistan and building that country. After building the constitution, there's still American troops in Afghanistan still training the people, even after Hamid Karzai is elected president and currently thinking about his second term. And say that's the sort of model that will work better in the long term. And relying on the Constitution, just whether the Constitution exists or not, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, we think is too superficial and simplistic. That even as it is, there are problems with the Constitution. Representation by the Sunnis, how many ministries they should have or they should not. If anything, at best, the Constitution is a short-term working document. And we think that's not enough as a sign of whether or not the troops should withdraw or not. I'm going to talk about the next two things that he said, which is in regards to saving lives or reducing terrorism. But before that, whoever's the largest beard.
The Constitution is artificial. Why do all the major ethnic groups in the country support it, sir?
I'll contend all the major ethnic groups in the country supporting them to begin with, because I don't think all of them holistically support them, which is the reason why you have many insurgents who are fighting mostly among themselves. But secondly, I did not say the Constitution is artificial. I said it's a document in progress, in work. And just because you have a Constitution is not enough for the United States to forego their responsibility and leave that country. Let's talk about saving lives and reducing terrorism. And I said a lot of US forces hurt and kill civilians, and we're very upset about those things that happen. We don't support those things. But we said a lot of US troops also gave their lives up for Iraqi people. Now these things don't necessarily make the headlines of media who like to play up the fact or try to scandalize their existence, but more than not, we're willing to stand by and say they've defended more Iraqi civilians than actually caused them harm. Then on this notion of a lightning rod, we say firstly, he said the US existence is the one that's sparking terrorism, etc., etc. So to some extent, that may be true. But we say also more importantly, I'm going to develop this later, we're talking about the power vacuum, a lot of them are due to internal disputes between the Shias, between the Sunnis, between the Kurds. A Shia mosque was bombed by Sunnis. Now that was not an American troop target. There was a target that was due to internal disputes, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, and that's one of the roles of the troops being there. But secondly, even if he says they are the source of all this hate, and everything they do is tied in with this hate and negative sentiments, then their new government is not going to be stable at all. because it's going to be viewed at by a creation of the American government. There were puppet leaders put there by America, and we don't think that government will get the kind of support they're talking about. Let me move into my development. Let me talk about security, and I'll talk about the other three levels. Firstly, Iraq is dangerous. Secondly, the local security forces are not ready. And thirdly, on reconstruction, you need political and physical security to ensure economic stability and development. Now, Iraq is dangerous. I don't think I have to convince many people that it is. It's dangerous to the people and civilians. It's also dangerous to the leaders. Who are the people providing personal security to the current elected leaders of Iraq? To the leaders of the Sunnis and the Shiites. It is American troops. Who provides security to the aid groups, the reconstruction policies? And it is the troops provided by America. I think that's a fundamental role that the troops are playing now. Yes, Mr. Omar Salah.
It is absolutely not the Americans that are providing protection for these people. It is the Iraqi people, their own systems of bodyguards, and the Iraqi police, sir.
Let's talk about the Iraqi police then. But I'll contend that not only are these Iraqi police currently under training and being built and supported by the American police, a lot of them are not ready. A lot of them, we just saw a mass withdrawal of 500 troops a couple of weeks ago because they didn't feel safe enough. And we understand that because it is a difficult time and a difficult situation. You have people who are not ready, who feel under pressure because they're trying to work, they're trying to bring safety and security to their own people, but at the same time they're holding hands with the Americans, and that makes their own people hate them and not want to cooperate with them too. And it's difficult, and you can't expect them to suddenly step in and take over everything. And you say the Americans need to shoulder some of that responsibility, and the local security forces are just not ready. If they want to make an argument that they are ready, I challenge them to defend it. Finally, in regards to reconstruction, we say funds are just coming in. And when you're giving funds, it's not so much whether we can give those funds or not, you want to see how they're done. And funds come with people and developing them. Talking about hostages and stuff is exactly the point. People are worried about how much they can involve. They say to ensure economic stability and security, you need political and physical security. Secondly, on political stability, on three levels again, we say there will be a power vacuum which will encourage insurgents to step in if America immediately pulls out. Secondly, we say the support for current leaders come from mostly American support. And thirdly, power distribution in America creates a base for negotiation and building. They talk about how America is the target for it, but you see how the political structure within, the power structure within Iraq is so fractured. You have Muqtada al-Sadr, who's untouchable in the south, and you say people like that, you have warlords and stuff in the north, the Kurdish representation. People like that would be more than happy, ladies and gentlemen, to step in and enforce their own local rule when the American government they will be more than happy, because as it is now, it is impossible for you to control them. As it is now, it's impossible to negotiate any sort of basis. If anything, this will be a sign of encouragement to terrorists, encouragement to warlords and insurgents to say, what your orders are, I'm sorry. Just to say that what we've done is right and is working. We say America, the current leaders who have volunteered themselves and put themselves in a dangerous position are relying on American support, are relying on the fact that troops will be around and put their lives in danger to support our positions. All in all, ladies and gentlemen, we say it's not a debate about whether the question to enter Iraq or not was wrong or right to begin with. Now that we're there and it is a mess, we say we should stay as long as it takes for us to solve that problem. We're very happy to oppose.
To the Asian Debate Institute, and I'd love to welcome the opposition team to school because their arguments are atrocious and they have a lot to learn. Now let's start with Lesson A, it's reputation. Lesson B will be the new arguments that you have no hope of defeating. Our argument and our line is that the Iraqi people are capable of protecting and working and dealing with the government for themselves. They say no, they're incapable, they're incompetent, they're too dumb to govern themselves. Much the same thing every imperialist has always said about the people they colonized. And our argument is that it's shameful, it's lame, and it's just not true. I think we're going to win this debate quite handily, and Yeah, y'all are going to learn something in the process. Now, let's start with some of the things they said at the top. He said the psyche of Americans is a justification for occupation. Well, perhaps the psyche of George Bush in your world is a justification for occupying Iraq. I would suggest that we should never trust little Bush's psyche. It's certainly not something that's helped him, and it hasn't helped very many other people in the world either. He even thought the war was already over when it had barely just begun. Don't forget that little adventure on the aircraft carrier. And your answer for George Bush's psyche is?
In the first place, we didn't say it was right to invade. What we are saying is it's wrong to leave when the job is not done. You have not proved it's going to save lives. You have not proved anything you've said.
You can sit down. I'm going to answer some of those other arguments. But my question to you is, when will it ever end? It will never, ever. You've already gone, man. Finish your answer. You can't identify a point in time when the American imperialists are going to say, let's go home, because they never, ever do it. They're still in Korea, for God's sakes. When will they go home from Iraq? I don't think you can ever identify a time when they're going to say, let's pull out, baby. It's time to go home. Sit down. I'm going to kick you around a little more, and then I'll give you a question. Now, next. He said it's like Afghanistan. It's absolutely not like Afghanistan. That argument is weaker than Dick Cheney's heart. Our argument is that you need to remove troops to stabilize the region. Remember, Tuna's lightning rod argument is absolutely unanswered. Who will they target when America goes home? Nobody, because the reason they're pouring in, the reason why Al-Qaeda has said go to Iraq to fight the Americans is because they're there. When they leave, who are they going to target? The Iraqis? Why? What argument? What rationale do they have for why Al-Qaeda sit down? What rationale do they have and that they will advance, potentially? Why is Al-Qaeda going to attack Iraqis? When the American troops aren't there and they don't look like puppets, they won't kill them. That's why they're killing them now, because they look like pawns of America, which answers some of the arguments Logan made below. Once they have their own constitution, once they are self-governing, once they run their own country, they will not look like tools of America because the troops aren't there and they can't point to them as puppets and tools of the state. When are they going to be targeted? This is obvious. Now, he says it can't stabilize, they're viewed as a tool. I've answered all that above, and he also says the United States is key to security. Why? The U.S. is key to insecurity. That's the whole point, man. That's why they are streaming across the border from Syria. That's why they're not stabilized right now. Their best argument is that these people can't govern themselves because the troops aren't ready in the Iraqi police, and I'm going to answer that now. First, there are a lot of Iraqi police. Second, they did a darn good job without us before we went in of having a military, of having a security force, of having police. Their claim is that these people are too dumb to train. Well, sure, Saddam did a lot of those things, but that Saddam was not the only person that's ruled Iraq. They have not been colonized for 100 years before we went in. So your claim will not be that they were too dumb to have a police force before Saddam. I think they're smart enough to figure out how to secure their own neighborhoods. Your argument is very imperialist. It's exactly what every imperialist has ever said. They need our help. Trust us, we'll make it better. But you don't have a whole lot of explanation as to why it's better, and you certainly don't have any proof that it will be better. Tuna's argument is unanswered that Vietnam demonstrates that when the people leave, things got better. While the U.S. was there, what happened? North Vietnam kicked the hell out of South Vietnam and forced us out. And finally, things stabilized, and you can answer that in your speech. But you didn't do it last time. Now, finally, he says it'll be a power vacuum. I think that argument is worse than Ariel Sharon pornography. I don't think you want to watch it, and you certainly don't want to buy it. He says that there's a power vacuum. Wrong. Why would there be a power vacuum? Why is it the Iraqis can't have their own police forces? Why is it they can't use the Constitution, which is our standard for leaving, to have a government? They don't have any explanation. Their only argument functionally becomes they need the U.S. because they're too dumb to do it without us. Wrong, man. There's no explanation as to why that's true. If they really needed training from other people, they could always ask for training and people to come back. But right now, and you don't have an answer to this argument, the Iraqi people want us out. When?
What happened when they removed Saddam Hussein is that all these ethnic minorities have been jockeying for power to make sure that they're the ones who get represented.
Let me introduce you to...
There's a power vacuum.
There's no power vacuum. Let me introduce you to a little thing called representative democracy. That's what's happening in Iraq right now. They're forming a government. So your claim is that you don't like their government, so you want to control and dominate it. The problem is that that causes terrorism, because of all the problems with the status quo, and it relies on imperialist notions of how we should control the world. If you think that's bad, you don't have an argument. Now, let me go to my new material. We're going to say this is good because it normalizes and stabilizes international relations in two distinct ways. One, on a global level, and two, on a regional level. First, globally, it is clear that the domestic publics throughout the world, with the allies, the coalition of the willing, coerced, or whatever you want to call them, the people in those countries don't want their troops in Iraq. Korean people don't really like having troops in Iraq. People in Poland, England, the United States, even there are lots of most people now, the majority of Americans don't want their troops in that country and think it's a mistake. The domestic publics clearly don't like this. This causes massive friction with other countries. It has crushed the credibility of the United States in international arenas. And you have no answer to that argument. I've already taken 2 questions. And it clearly is hurting the United States' soft power and ability to cooperate with other countries. This is an unanswerable argument because it's factually true.
Oh, that point.
No. In the speech, good luck. If you can prove that Iraqi invasion helps relations with other allies, I'll buy you a beer even though you don't drink. I know. Now, second, regionally, now is a unique time in the Middle East. Don't forget that Israel is in the process of pulling out from Gaza. The Middle East peace process is at a critical juncture. And one of the problems with the peace process is the U.S. is not an honest broker. They don't look like a country that other Palestinians and moderate Arabs can trust because they are constantly dominating other Arab countries. That's true. Come on, you're going to make the claim that other moderate Arabs like the Americans in Iraq? I don't think you'll win that. Pretty clearly, the United States does not have any credibility with moderate Arabs who are critical to peace in the Middle East. And I would suggest that now is a critical time, given the pullout from Gaza, for the United States to look like an honest broker that is not trying to dominate other Arab countries, that they believe in the self-determination of Islamic people. Remember, this is a signal that was symbolically seen throughout the region. All people will see the United States taking a stand. Yes, we believe we believe that Muslim peoples can in fact govern themselves, and it certainly would justify what's taking place in Gaza and would absolutely help the United States in negotiating the agreements that are going on in the Middle East peace process. And for those reasons, we are proud to propose.
I'd like to thank the second member of government for an extremely factual speech. Now I'd like to invite the second member of opposition to answer simple questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, the function of any government side in the debate is to prove things. Really, to prove something. They say something's going to happen, prove it. And we have not heard a single bit of concrete proof from this side, other than a lot of assertions that the only reason people are dying in Iraq is because Americans are there. That somehow when the Americans leave, and I quote Tuna, that killing will stop. We didn't see proof of that. The only proof they gave was because they're a lightning rod, folks. So let me get this straight. No other people will be killed when Americans leave, because all of the foreign terrorists who have come in, as they themselves have admitted, will now suddenly go, oh, they're gone. We don't need to fight anymore. Forget about power. Let's allow them to have a democracy. Forget about power and control. Let's allow them to run a democracy the way the United States government wants them to.
That's your line.
And that's what they haven't proved. Because if, as they say, the Constitution is followed, and because it's followed, and they didn't prove this, by the way, because it's followed, you'll have security, you'll have peace, you'll have stability. Have a seat. Because it's followed, suddenly, all the foreign terrorists who hate America and all the democracy it stands for will say, it's okay if Iraq is democratic because there are no Americans in it. They didn't prove anything of that. They just kept asserting. Tuna said he'd prove that he would save lives. Tuna said he'd prove that he would reduce terrorism. They didn't do crap in that sense. And then Jason came up and said that suddenly, have a seat please, suddenly they would normalize international relations because, hey, guess what, folks? Now that America is gone, all the other countries will be all happy-feely, and they'll go, you know what? All our own citizens who died, the Korean citizen who was beheaded, all of these things, it was all worth it because America left, even though the job was not yet done. Now tell me, have a seat. Tell me how much of a moral justification America would have, how much moral justification America would have if they allowed the deaths of these innocent citizens to go unjustified.
Sir.
Have a seat. Now let's see. Our case from this side has been very simple. We never said that the initial occupation was good. In fact, to be frank, I'll lay it down right now. It wasn't good. But the point of the matter is, America came in with a plan and they made a commitment, as Logan said. They made a promise. They said they would build democracy. They said Iraq would be better for what they've done. Have a seat. And not only is Iraq not better, Iraq is going to get worse because, as Logan already pointed out in his speech, you don't have security. You don't have stability. You have foreign terrorists controlling. The most feared person in Iraq, ladies and gentlemen, Muqtada al-Sadr, followed by Saddam Hussein. Have a seat. When Americans leave, who's left? Muqtada al-Sadr, followed by Saddam Hussein. So how is this going to make things more stable and more secure? I'm going to talk about, have a seat please. I'm going to talk about two things in this debate. I'm going to tell you why America leaving is bad for America. Because it destroys the fundamental moral high ground that America has always used to justify their foreign policy, which is that they're right and that they're promoting democracy.
On imperialism, sir.
And the second thing I'm going to talk about is American psyche. Americans like to feel right. They like to feel that they're good. They like to feel that they're doing the good thing. That's why when they bombed Japan and killed 100,000 innocent people with the atomic bomb, it was good because they ended the war. Americans don't like to know that when they kill innocent people, it's a bad thing. They want to know they're promoting democracy. They want to know they're promoting peace. They're not doing that with this plan. Yes, sir. Answer that.
I have no need to, because you're actually arguing what we're arguing, sir. Exactly the same thing.
Thank you. He just showed he didn't know what he was going to talk about. I'm telling you one thing, and one thing clearly. It is not finished. When America said they were going to build democracy, have a seat. When America said they were going to build democracy, ask yourselves, what does democracy mean? Democracy doesn't just mean a piece of paper. We've seen constitutions around the world. Dictatorships have been based on constitutions, ladies and gentlemen. A constitution by itself does not guarantee stability and peace. Have a seat, sir. It does not do all these things. What guarantees peace and democracy is whether the people are safe, which we've already shown they're not, and whether, have a seat, whether Americans saying they will do good things actually gets followed through. And that's my point here. Have a seat. Americans said they'd come in and help. What happened after Americans came in? Okay, fine. People that died, etc. But I'll tell you what's happening now. According to the IMF, okay, over the last year, the economy of Iraq has grown by 50%. And the IMF said that the only way for this kind of growth to continue is for security to be ensured in Iraq. Now, have they proven that killings will stop after the Americans leave? Have a seat. Have they proven?
You did, sir.
Have a seat. Have they proven that the lack of American people in Iraq will suddenly mean all of a sudden everybody's so friendly with each other? Now let's talk about Vietnam, ladies and gentlemen.
History of the
Have a
20th
seat.
century,
Have a
sir.
seat, please. Let's talk about Vietnam. They said they were right because they proved after the Americans left Vietnam, and this was their key proof, this is the only example Tuna brought about this. After the Americans left Vietnam, suddenly Vietnam became a part of the international community. Everything was all right. Here's what happened after the Americans left Vietnam. You think the North Vietnamese said, oh cool, our job is done, we will no longer invade? Did the Vietnamese say, we're going to stop invading South Vietnam? Did they say, we're not going to take over Hanoi, we're not going to take over Ho Chi Minh? Did they do that? No, they did not. They continued to take over, and Vietnam became, Vietnam became, guess what? Communist. Communist, ladies and gentlemen. And I'll tell you what's going to happen when Iraq is abandoned by an American government that already did so much damage. What's going to happen is this, that this Iraqi democracy, which they say the Constitution will uphold, wow, that piece of paper is damn powerful. That piece of paper will guarantee that all the foreign terrorists who've gone into Iraq and hate America and the democracy that America stands for, that piece of paper will be so powerful, these terrorists are going to go, no, we're going to stop, we'll allow them to be democratic. This will damage American foreign relations. This will damage the foundation of democracy upon which America bases its foreign policy. And Americans will feel that it wasn't worth it. When 1,800 American soldiers have already died, and they leave a country that will no longer be a democracy because there's no peace and security and because these foreign terrorists are going to control it, when Americans see all their children killed on ABC News, when Americans see all of this, the only question they're going to ask themselves is this: was the Iraq war good for us or not? And ask yourselves that question. See if the American people are going to answer that with the appropriate yes, it was good for us. We say no, it's not going to be good for the American people to think that. Because if they think about all the American people dying, $300 billion US being spent on a reconstruction that hasn't yet been completed, and all of these people suddenly being given up before democracy is actually established, while they are actually growing, while the IMF says we need security, all of those things happening, the American people say it's not worth it. And that's what we're saying today. They haven't shown how them leaving is going to make things better. We've shown you why it's going to make things worse. Thank you very much.
Now I'd like to invite the hottest, sexiest debater in the house, Mr. Omar Salazar.
Omar, you're hot. Unfortunately for you, Alan, you'll never find out if that's true or not. Ladies and gentlemen, honoured chair, I'm going to deal with this debate in a couple of ways. But first of all, I want to say something at the outset. Our people on this side have absolutely no concept of what self-determination means for anybody.
Hear, hear.
They have no self-determination themselves. Their self is determined by somebody who sits at this moment in time in judgment upon the rest of the world in his presidential office, the Oval Office in the White House in the United States of America. Look, it's as simple as this. You've heard this phrase on TV, when the buying stops, the killing can too. And what we've said on this side is, when the US leave, that's when the killing will stop in that country. And to answer the question which was placed by the firework that exploded immediately before me in this debate, to answer the question that he said, are people still going to die? Yeah, there probably will be murders. But there will be far fewer than the thousands of people whose lives are currently under threat. There will sit down, PJ. There will be far fewer people who lose their lives as a result of the conflict between opposing groups in all the variety of places. Because remember, essentially, this is a three-sided conflict, at the very least, and possibly four. It's not just a simple matter of Shia versus Sunni Muslim. It's not just a simple matter of those people in the country who would sort of align themselves with Iran to the east, and the people who would align themselves with Syria in the west. It's not just a question of that kind of thing, points which were made by the second speaker on this side. What it is a question of if we remove the third party in this conflict, the lightning rod, which actually ensures that all the conflicts end bloody, that people die in every sense of in different places, different parts of Iraq, every single day of the current situation, then what we're saying is, when you remove at least 1/3 of that, we're suggesting that far, far fewer people are going to die. And once the Iraqis get their own particular constitution and government on track, yeah, we agree it's a working paper. Once they get their own constitution working for them, and we believe it's the Iraqi people that should be getting their own constitution working for them, not allowing somebody else to design it, then the only way in which you can possibly do it, is sit down, all of you. I've eaten my toast earlier on this morning. Basically, once the US pulls out, then these people essentially can start deciding how their own lives should work, and indeed start governing and administrating their own country. No, sit down and don't bother standing up again. Getting tired of you. Now, so, Mr. Speaker, essentially it's very, very simple and very straightforward. This is not a debate about what is good for the US. This is not a debate about what makes Bush and the other politicos on the Beltway in their limousines feel more comfortable. This is not a debate about what the British people want their Prime Minister to do. Because actually the British people, as we've already said, they'd actually rather have their own troops back home in Britain and not involved in this bloody mess. And that was a morass, a term that came out of the first speaker on that side. These people actually want something to happen. These people want changes. These Iraqi people must pursue the course of their own self-determination. And the only way that's going to happen is through the immediate withdrawal, not some kind of phased withdrawal, but the immediate withdrawal of the US troops. Yes, sir.
it's an immediate U.S. withdrawal. It doesn't make them responsible. They don't have to be responsible for security there anymore. They don't have to be responsible for reconstruction. They don't have to be responsible for making things. Is that fair? Is that
okay.
Fair?
Basically, all right. Let me start then. See, in order to answer that question, I want to start. I mean, I'm going to split my rebuttal arguments or my attacking arguments basically down. I'm going to deal with Logan's animals first, and then I'm going to deal with PJ fireworks second. Now, basically, Logan started off his speech by saying Iraq is dangerous. Go figure. Congratulations, I'm glad you worked that out. Yes, it is. But it is more dangerous because the US troops are there. This was the whole lightning rod argument of Father Bear at the beginning of the speech on the government bench. US troops, their presence, their very presence, is the cause of much of the friction between the other groups in the country. Remove that cause of friction, and then people might actually be able to start getting their lives on track. How can rebuilding, Mr. Speaker, ever be successful when your builders then become the targets of insurgents? How can you ever get your things on track? How can you ever get this rebuilding program on track when people, aid agencies, refuse to go into the country to actually put these programs in place and implement them? People like the Red Cross have pulled out of the country. Other aid groups have refused to contribute aid because they say, we will not go in, it is just not working, you are not solving problems, you are adding to them. Yes.
And they will continue to leave Iraq when the Americans leave Iraq because they will feel that they will not be working in an environment safe enough for them to actually build things. They haven't proven that will actually happen.
Absolutely not. So the third speaker on that bench heard nothing that was said on this side about historical references. Look, and to say that it was not the same in Vietnam is absolute nonsense. It was absolutely the same situation. It's been absolutely... This is the history of US involvement in political conflicts and armed conflicts in other countries. They go wading in, guns blazing, they remove the source of the problem, and then they refuse to leave. And to say, for the speaker on that side, to say, I mean, he says, he points his finger at the Iraqi police and waves it like that. How can the Iraqi police ever stand on their own 2 feet if you never take away the training wheels? I mean, it just does not work. It's a mess, Logan concluded his speech by saying. We stay as long as it takes to clean up the mess. Nothing about how long that's going to take. And as I said, history seems to suggest that could be forever. As Jason also argued in his second speech, that woman, Mrs. Casey, is going to be camped in Bush's driveway for the next 25 years. PJ apparently thought this debate was an extension of his teaching argumentation earlier on this morning. He actually argued at the outset that American-style democracy is actually appreciated by Arabic or Islamic states. So what is he saying? So the democratic process that they put in there and his first speaker swore to uphold as long as it takes, is he now saying, well, actually, that's going to take forever because nobody really wants it? Mr. Speaker, quite clearly at this moment in time, the debate clearly rests on the government bench. They've done nothing thus far to answer one simple question. What would be achieved if the US stayed on beyond the end of next week? Our answer to that very clearly has been absolutely nothing. Thank you.
Now I'd like to invite the final constructive speakers of the House. I think it's time we had a female perspective on the stage.
Is a lot of rhetoric and not a lot of real analysis and cold hard facts actually happening on the ground. Because simplistically speaking, what the Prime Minister talked about was why essentially we need to withdraw because people are dying, but not exactly correctly examining the entire picture. Why are people dying? And the second speaker, as much as I think Jason's really cute, just talked about why people don't like Americans. We like Jason, but we don't like everyone else in that country. Well, we like him too. But basically, they didn't give us like real analysis to ground everything in, which is why they kept ignoring the very brilliant arguments my first two speakers kept giving in this debate. So I'll go on into the first point of Americans. What are the Americans doing in Iraq? They're protecting the helpless Iraqi people who don't have guns and who aren't participating in the power struggle to make sure that they're in charge of government. The one good thing the Americans did when they invaded Iraq is when they removed Saddam Hussein. Naturally, when you enter an ethnically divided country where various ethnic majorities want to assert their power and dominance, no matter what happens, whether or not the US stayed on or not, war will definitely ensue because people want to be in power. The American presence that's there right now is what's making sure that these ethnic divisions are going to work forward towards one goal of establishing one government for these people to actually self-determine themselves. And this is the big part of the picture that they forgot to talk about. So let's say now, let's remove the American presence. We say that there will be new targets. The weak Iraqi people, the weak ethnic groups who don't have guns, and they will continue being marginalized the same way they were oppressed during Saddam Hussein's time. And this is what we mean, that when we remove Iraqi troops now in Iraq, that we will be committing a graver mistake because we went in, killed a lot of people, and nothing changed. This is why we make a commitment to continue making sure that these people we sought to protect in the first place, when we remove Saddam, will continue to be protected. So is it really that simple? You remove the Americans, there will be no more targets? No. There will be targets, and there will continue to be targets when you keep acceding to simplistic terroristic demands of power, which is what they basically talked about. Going into the second issue in this debate, but before I go on with that, tuna.
How can you characterize the Iraqi people as murderous and evil? What's the justification for that? That they would kill the innocent?
I'm so evil. I basically represented the entire Iraqi people as a bunch of murderous people. We say that there are ethnic divisions, and it's not as simple as Dr. Tuna Snyder wants to paint it. That there are groups there that want power. This isn't the majority of Iraqi people. But what's key to remember is that these people are the ones with the guns. And when you have the guns, you have the power to blow up things. You have, unfortunately, the power to do things. Sit down. So I basically explained and continued on what Logan told us earlier on. Why there's a power vacuum, and essentially why we need political stability. The second thing I wanted to criticize in this debate is the definition and the standard that was set. We will immediately leave Iraq when we follow the one-week deadline to make sure that the constitution is completed. The problem with the Iraqi constitution as it stands right now is that not all ethnic groups are happy with it. Let's say we follow what the government says. We leave immediately after the one-week deadline passes for the ratification of the Constitution, even though there are zillions of provisions that make sure that certain ethnic groups continue to be marginalized, continue to be underrepresented, and these problems will continue. What happens then? We say that that Constitution is a worthless document. Your withdrawal amounts to nothing. Because when you tie a standard to immediate withdrawal and promise that the Constitution is safe and ratified, first, you have to do this magical, wonderful thing. You have to prove the Constitution actually works at present. That people agree with the Constitution. None of them in substance talked about the problems of the Constitution. How can they prove that immediate withdrawal will guarantee an environment of safety and security that will ensure the sort of reconstruction Logan and PJ are talking about will actually occur on the ground? And that was something we never heard from either of these Americans and this British dude. But Jason, I'd like to hear what you
What evidence do you have that if the U.S. stays there, it won't continue to get worse and worse and worse like it has continued to do for the past year? You got nothing. The status quo says you're wrong. You have no evidence it's going to get better if they stay.
And you have no proof otherwise either. But what we're saying is that at least we have people like the Americans who also have guns who can continue protecting these people. The situation will worsen. We will concede that people will keep thinking that the Americans are targets. But remember, at least these American targets protect the weak Iraqi people who have no guns. And that's what you need when you want self-determination to ensue. That you actually have a people to protect, to ensure that self-determination to actually occur. We say that the situation will get worse. Fine, but at least there are people there who can keep stopping that from happening. To keep the wide-scale genocide of some ethnic groups at bay. Because there are these Americans that you have to do something about it. Now there are but some certain quick things I want to talk about. Basically, when Jason said about stabilizing international relations in the world. And we say, and my analysis for this is, basically, Americans, the Polish, the Koreans, they don't want their soldiers to stay in Iraq because they die. Well, they have to die because they have to protect people. That's what war is all about. When public opinion wavers at these particular extensive risks, we say that is not the right time to listen to them. The right thing to do is to still stay in Iraq and make sure people are safe. People clearly understand the consequences of war, and rhetoric like that won't stabilize IR. What actually happens is, you just keep making sure that the Iraqis keep getting downtrodden upon, and nothing ever changes. And because of that, we think it's quite reasonable to make sure that they continue staying there. Logan talked about the essential importance of political stability for the reconstruction of Iraq. PJ talked to you why essentially it's important for the Americans to do this right, because the Americans are all over the world, and what they're doing all over the world is they're also rebuilding societies. They're protecting people. We don't like them in Korea, but hey, if it stops the North Koreans from coming here, then we have no problem with that. We have to make sure that we do this right to keep the morale up among all the Americans, for them to continue doing the right thing. And for all these reasons, we cannot possibly see why the government should take this today.
I'd like to invite the final speaker from the Asian bloc to end the line from the opposition.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've had a consistent stand throughout this debate, and we said immediate withdrawal from Iraq does more harm than good for the people of Iraq or America, or from the perspective of America, which then affects people around the world. I'm going to look at this debate, my reply on a few levels. Firstly, this notion of danger. Is it more dangerous with US presence or without US presence? Secondly, the Iraqi capability to self-govern. Thirdly, this notion of imperialism. And then I look at the stuff that we spoke about that they didn't really address. Let's look at this notion of danger. They said it's dangerous due to the Iraqi presence. But again, that's a little bit of a catch-22 that they put themselves into. Because at the same time, they said, oh, there is a constitution, there is a stable government, people will get along. Because, you know, the United States, which has obviously helped write most of this constitution, and obviously put most of these people in the government, once they leave, nobody's going to think that these people are US puppets. Nobody's going to be upset that these people are there. But that's the situation, and this is where they shoot themselves in the foot. Because if they say that people hate American influence and things connected with America, which we agree, which is why they bomb local Iraqi police stations which don't hold any Americans, the people will then not have any respect for this constitution which they've just whipped out of the thin air. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, again, they shoot their case doesn't really stand on water because it shoots itself. We said, Mr. Speaker, sir, it's really not that simple. And this is where they got a little bit simplistic. We said in Iraq, yes, this notion of America, there's also insurgents, there's also warlords, there's all these different things going on. They attack the Iraqi police, local leaders, buildings, mosques. It's a very, very complicated situation. And right now, the only sort of form of stability, the only factor that tries to bring stability there is the fact that there is direct American presence. The American presence there, they have a responsibility to ensure things are safe for people. Once they're out of Iraq, why should they have to be responsible to ensure that the troops are trained? Why are they responsible then, once they're out of Iraq, to ensure that their convoys are safe? If they're out of Iraq, why do they have to worry whether or not the Red Cross gets there safely in time, or whether the roads are safe to travel on? They have far, far lesser responsibility to ensure these things, and we think that's a huge problem. That's something that we came out early in the case, which they never addressed. Then this notion of Iraqi capability to self-determination. Now, we think self-determination rocks. We think everybody should be able to self-determine themselves. But this is not a debate about the ends. This is about how you achieve those ends. And on no level have they told us, how will this happen? How will this Did they even defend this constitution and talk about it? Did they talk about Iraqi capability? Did they give you a name of one person capable of doing something who has unanimous support of the Iraqi people? And we said no. We said quick pullouts are dangerous. That's what created the Israeli and Palestine conflict. That's what makes sub-Saharan Africa such a huge mess now. Because people moved away irresponsibly before governments were built. And we think that's something that we don't want to happen again. And we said you have to be there long enough to ensure something. And this is where we got to this, when do you pull out, or when does it become imperialism? They said it's exactly the same as Vietnam. We said no, it's not exactly the same as Vietnam, because firstly there's no Vietnamese. But secondly, we said in Vietnam there was an ongoing war that took a very, very long time. The notion of the war in Iraq, the invasion, was over in 10 days. Now the focus is on reconstruction and rebuilding. It's about how to build a new country, to build leaders and to build support. In that situation, we say it's very, very important. It's imperative that the people who started the war stay there, put themselves in the danger spot until they've solved the problem. Because only then will they ensure that they were responsible. And this is a situation that has never been answered, the situation of responsibility. We said you have to be there because of the problems. We talked about the power vacuum of insurgencies. We talked about Muqtada al-Sadr's army that has 7,000 troops and is impossible to stop. We talked about the incapability of local forces and troops to do these things. We don't say that they will forever be incapable. We've never said that they are intellectually, that they don't want these things. But as things are now in that situation, you need the backing of an established superpower. You need somebody who can say, we'll put all these troops there to ensure the stability. We need somebody to say, we can help develop current leaders, to protect their safety, to help build a base to support. So all in all, ladies and gentlemen, in summary, both of the teams want Iraqi self-determination and self-governance. The question is, what is the more responsible way to get there? And we say that falls on the side of the opposition. We're very happy.
With their characterization of the debate, that self-determination is the end. And if you believe that U.S. troops are the proper means to self-determination, then I guess you would vote for them. But if you think that allowing people who were elected and wrote their own constitution to implement it in the absence of U.S. troops, then you'll vote for the government. I think something really important has been lost here. My deputy prime minister pointed out that if we withdraw from Iraq, we're at a crucial time. If the U.S. withdraws from Iraq, we're at a crucial time in the Middle East peace negotiations. We have a window of opportunity. The Israelis are withdrawing from Gaza. The U.S. needs to act as an honest broker. What's the opposition answer to that? Silence. Because they have none. What's the most important conflict in this part of the world? The conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians. They will squander an opportunity to solve that because they want to keep a promise that was made in error. We've offered a number of important arguments. We think we will save lives. There will be some violence. No one's arguing that. There will be less violence when the infidel occupiers are gone. Oh, there will be violence, they say. There will be a power vacuum for a few minutes, perhaps. The elected officials from all major ethnic groups favor the current constitution. If both Kurdish major parties are in favor of it, if Ayatollah al-Sistani is in favor of it, if the Shia religious leaders are in favor of it, why won't it work? Because they don't trust the Iraqi people. And we do. There will be saved lives. Terrorism. Did they ever talk about London? Did they ever talk about Madrid? Retaliation. The longer the occupation goes on, the more terrorist events there will be. Vietnam and self-determination. Was it an ongoing war in Vietnam? Yes, because the U.S. wouldn't leave. The sooner you leave, the better off it will be. Maybe it wouldn't have become a communist regime if we had not stayed so long, if we had not destroyed the society before the Americans decide to leave. We've committed that mistake. Let us not do it again. We need to get out. We trust the Iraqi people, the elected officials who wrote their own constitution or support it, to implement it, and they don't. I think all I need to do is to repeat a bunch of the opposition's arguments. And you'll see, I think, why we are winning this debate. The Bush foreign policy will be stronger if we lead troops there. We innocent people can die now because some have already died. We can't let them die in vain. Let's have more of them die. They say that the police are puppets. The sooner we leave, the sooner they will no longer be viewed as puppets. The method of the government is far superior. We trust the Iraqi people. We say that when the infidel troops are gone, things will get better, not perfect, but better. The Kurds, the Sunnis, the Shias have agreed to a constitution. That's not a power vacuum. It's a federal system where they will all be recognized. If you want democracy, the U.S. people want us out, want the U.S. out of Iraq. The Iraqis want us out of Iraq. The UK people want their troops out of Iraq. I think the Korean people probably want their troops out of Iraq. That's the kind of democracy we're talking about. The Iraqi people want U.S. troops out of Iraq. Everybody wants U.S. troops out of Iraq, but 3 naysayers who are concerned about protecting the American psyche. Our approach is better. The imperialist, hated occupation must end. If you ask the dead Iraqis whether they wanted the troops to leave earlier, I imagine they would have said yes. And I think you will say yes to the motion of this government. Permission to cross the aisle?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, go for a break, 5 minutes.
Have some water.